Well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are confronting a chilling reality, I think, in the United States. You know, yesterday when we were covering this, or at least the buildup of this, someone left a comment here on our channel that said, I don't think 90% of the people in the United States understand how severely bad this is for the United States right now. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think most people are just kind of living their lives. They don't realize what these masterminds, these warmongers, these criminals are doing right now in Washington, D.C., leading us into war, the very real possibility that the world is inching closer to nuclear war at this hour. This is not hyperbole or fear-mongering. The fact is, it starts with a stark warning tonight from Russia. A few hours ago, sirens blaring all over Ukraine. Russian strikes coming and people preparing for massive strikes, air raid sirens sounding across Ukraine, including in the capital city. Massive Russian strikes coming. Russia is preparing massive strikes across the entire country. They've already struck, as Colonel McGregor told us yesterday, the western part of the country, knocking out all sorts of electricity grids and power supplies. So you want a cold winter? Because this is about to happen. And the United States doesn't give a rat's ass about the people of Ukraine at all, full stop. And these people are going to freeze to death this winter, thanks to Antony Blinken, thanks to Jake Sullivan, thanks to the demented President Biden, who's basically conceded power to the deep state in Washington, D.C. And State Department officials today are getting rid of the embassy, are closing the embassy, the United States Embassy, saying, quote, out of an abundance of caution, the embassy will be closed, and embassy employees are being instructed to shelter in place. That's going to work, sheltering in place. When these massive missiles start coming in, sheltering in place, you're going to be fine there inside the embassy. Meanwhile, Russia is preparing for nuclear war, folks. Like, they're not taking this lightly. We are in the United States. People are just still going to Target and living their day, which is fine. Like, live your life and work your jobs, but make demands of your government to stop this madness. So Russia has started mass producing mobile nuclear bunkers capable of housing dozens and protecting against shockwaves and radiation. So, and as we speak, Russia is planning to move citizens into underground nuclear bunkers that they've already built. Let that sink in for a second. Thanks to warmongers in D.C., the Russian government is taking active measures right now to safeguard its people against what it perceives to be an imminent threat of nuclear escalation. Protecting its people. Russia has now begun mass producing mobile nuclear bomb shelters that can protect against shockwaves and radiation from a nuclear blast. Take a look.
We got any of those?
Do we have any of those? I haven't seen any in the United States. Think about this for a second. Why would a global superpower with decades of military strategy and intelligence take such drastic action unless, of course, they believe this threat was real? They're not just doing this for what, shits and giggles?
I don't like that saying.
That's what my dad used to say from Baltimore. I'm going to do this for shits and giggles. But here's the part that should concern you even more. This isn't happening in a vacuum, folks. The warmongers in D.C. are playing a direct role in escalating tensions right now with reckless abandon. Overnight, the Biden administration doubled down on this plan on Ukraine using long-range weapons to attack deep inside of Russia. This morning, the Biden administration announced a new round of money being sent into Ukraine. Another $275 million for a new funded weapons package being sent to Ukraine. And of course, we know, because Antony Blinken told us a few days ago, that they are going to do everything in their power to get all of this money that they can into Ukraine before Donald Trump assumes office on January 20th. So it's an addiction.
He said every available dollar, and I just was wondering where those were
Any
during
available
the
dollar.
hurricanes, and during the crime waves we've been having, and I don't know, Maui. You're just like, I didn't know there were available dollars.
Oh, there's all
that's news to me.
Well, see, there's available dollars when you fake print them, like the Federal Reserve does in the United States, and we fake print money to support all of these foreign wars because it's an addiction.
Why couldn't we fake print them for our people?
We do. We fake print money for stimulus packages, and then we have a massive inflationary period, and we have an economy in the toilet, right? So that's it. When you print money like this, that's exactly the ruin you cause, right? So it's an addiction. It lines the pockets of these defense contractors, fuels a bloated military industrial complex, and drags the American people closer to catastrophe. Who's running the show there? As Spirit Walker says, the American people are being dragged into this kicking and screaming. Americans voted overwhelmingly against this. They voted for Trump against this, who warned, and by the way, he was mocked. I don't know, you remember that ABC debate?
Oh,
when
yes.
he was the one that brought up nuclear war, and Kamala Harris is like laughing.
Yeah.
She's like, how dare you talk about nuclear war? And Trump's like, I've been president before. I know what this looks like. We are getting dangerously close to nuclear war. And ABC and Kamala Harris mocked him for it.
Right. Yes.
So just so you understand, Russia is fast-tracking the development of underground nuclear bunkers to protect its people. Democrats in Washington are doing the exact opposite. They're sending billions of taxpayer dollars overseas to fuel wars that most Americans neither support nor understand. We have zero infrastructure in the United States that could save lives in a critical crisis like this. No fallout shelters, no contingency if Russia, fires missiles into Nashville, Los Angeles, Buffalo, New York City, Los Angeles. Do you guys know where your fallout shelters are? Where you'll be taken care of, where food and supplies will be? No, you don't. Voters voted overwhelmingly for Trump to stop these wars. Meanwhile, back home, our economy is faltering. Even Hillary Clinton today came out and said that Democrats should stop lying to the American people about the economy. They should tell the truth about the economy.
Who woke her up?
Right. I mean, like, what? Where were you a few weeks ago? So you were literally out there championing Kamala Harris. So now you're telling Democrats to talk about the economy?
Literally, their talking point on the campaign was things are better. The jobs numbers are up because they're government jobs. And inflation rate has fallen, although it was increased in October. They didn't have those numbers on the campaign, so they didn't have to talk about it. So they were literally gaslighting to say, you think the economy is bad, but you're wrong, honey. It's not. It's fine.
And
yeah, you're
like,
fine.
She's got the AOC problem. Like, was there no point she could have said this prior to the election? Like,
right.
Was there a gag order?
And stop blaming Trump.
It's so disingenuous.
And they want to blame Trump for all their problems in the world. No, you need to blame your own party for all the problems right now in the United States. Don't blame Trump. Trump won because you guys suck. Trump won because maybe they don't really like Trump, whatever. They know that their lives suck right now. They know that they can't pay the bills right now. Anyway, our economy's in ruins. The people are struggling to pay their bills. The basic infrastructure that could save lives in a crisis like this, like fallout shelters or anything like, is non-existent in the United States. We've got some old 1950s bunkers hidden around town where occasionally you'll see a fallout sign, but those things are now turned into like Rotary clubs, and Kiwanis clubs and stuff like that. Not up to par for modern thermonuclear war. The bombs that we're now having that we use today, drastically different than they were in the 1940s and 1950s. The government has no plan for us, but Russia is preparing. And also the Biden administration is now violating once again another one of his own policies and okays anti-personnel mines for Ukraine. This happened earlier this morning. So what in the world is happening? Who is running things in the executive branch? All of these things Biden was explicit about, that we will not allow this. We will not allow pedal mines. We absolutely don't want this. This violates international norms. These pedal mines, which Ukraine uses and launches into ethnic Russian areas, like in the Donbass, and little kids go into the park thinking that they're leaves or a toy, and they pick them up and their arms are blown off or killed. Like Ava Bartlett, one of the greatest journalists in the world, has firsthand covered this, and we featured that on our show 2 years ago. And now Biden's okay with this?
These are marked as international crimes.
Yes.
By the international bodies of war.
Yeah,
they are supposed to not be allowed. We kind of agreed to them, but okay.
But today something's different.
Their justification for it is, well, modern mines, they don't last for they don't stay active for decades like old mines used to. So they're not as lethal over time. That's their excuse.
I mean, just look on this map. Can you go back to that last image, the one before the pedal mine there, Philip? Yeah, that one. You can see the contested area, right? This is the area that voted overwhelmingly in red to become part of Russia, right? That is Donetsk, of course, and the Donbass down into Crimea. That area, look how heavily mined that is. I mean, these are areas which have, Ukraine is already among the world's most mined countries in the world, according to Human Rights Watch. Mines cover 30% of this area, 30%. And now you want to add this into the mix? Something that violates his own norms. Tucker Carlson today tweeted this just a few hours ago, said the prayers of good people got Donald Trump elected 2 weeks ago. Wars with Russia and Iran are the counterattack. Let that sink in for a second. So what I read that is the deep state, right? Because wars with Russia and Iran are the counterattack to you people electing Donald Trump. The deep state is pissed that you did that. And this is the counterattack 58 days until President Trump assumes office. It's absolutely deeply disturbing. Tucker says this is, and he just released this a few minutes ago, right before the show. And he said, D.C. is underestimating Vladimir Putin. Watch.
I think we're watching the most evil thing I've ever seen in my lifetime, which is the lame duck administration leaving the next administration with the world war, with a nuclear conflict, by allowing Ukraine, a proxy state of the United States, to strike within Russia. And I'll just have one editorial comment and then I'm just going to let you go. But I think that people in Washington misunderstand Vladimir Putin and they think he's a monarch with absolute power, which is not true. And Russian politics is complex and it's lively. And Putin is very concerned with his approval rating within Russia. He cannot appear weak. That's a huge threat to him. He feels that, I can confirm. And if he can't hide attacks on him by the United States through Ukraine, either on Moscow or big civilian casualties, I think he will have no choice, in his view, but to launch like a serious response against Ukraine or NATO countries or possibly the United States. So this seems like the most reckless thing that's ever happened in my life.
And in mine. It's unbelievable. So we'll be watching this very, very closely. Today's show is brought to you by Native Path Collagen. Now, finding an honest doctor that isn't following in the footsteps of Big Pharma can feel impossible. That's why millions of men and women have turned to one Texas doctor and the 7 reasons that he says anyone over the age of 50 should be drinking this one thing. That's right. It's not milk or another calcium-rich drink. Instead, it's a unique protein that naturally declines with age, and it's proven to significantly increase bone strength and soothe joint pain. Oh, we all need that. It minimizes wrinkles and cellulite. It even enhances hair follicle thickness and even reverses nail damage, with users reporting results in as little as 2 weeks. That's right. As a partner of the show, this Texas doctor is offering Redacted listeners up to 45% off his bone, joint, and ligament restoring formula. It's all you need to do is go to this URL right on your screen, getnativepathcollagen.com/redacted. It has thousands of 5-star reviews, over 4 million jars sold. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it today. And Redacted listeners can visit right now, getnativepathcollagen.com/redacted to get up to 45% off while supplies last.
All right, moving on to Gaza and the Palestinian territory. Seymour Hersh, the journalist who reported that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, among other things he's been right about in the wars in the Middle East for decades, he reports that Israel is planning to occupy both Gaza and the West Bank within weeks. Now, this is the bombshell report that he released today. Here is what he says is happening in the West Bank. He says control all over Gaza and the West Bank is the core demand of the religious right in Israel that now dominates the government, which is true. The right-wing government of Netanyahu and his supporters have always wanted full control of these Palestinian territories, and this is what they're pushing for. It obviously, you guys, has less to do with the hostages. Please do not fool yourself to think that it has nothing. Yes,
it has nothing to do with the hostages.
But his talking point is that we need to attack Hamas, get our hostages back so that this never happens again. Absolutely not. This has been something that he said for decades, if you've been listening. So back to that screen, please. I'm sorry. He says he interviewed a well-informed Washington official that the Israeli leadership will formally annex the West Bank in the near future. Perhaps, you guys, 2 weeks.
So this will become part of Israel then, permanently?
Yes, in the hope that this decisive step will end once and for all any talk of a 2-state solution. So even though West Bank is not ruled by Gaza, even though it was not originally part of this conflict with Gaza and Hamas, they're taking it as license to continue to plow into the West Bank where illegal settlers have been for decades. And they're just going to say, okay, game's over. It's a rip the Band-Aid type situation because the world's letting them. Here's what he says about Gaza and that it's even worse. He talks about this person today and how he spoke to somebody and it's incredibly difficult for journalists to get in. But here is the report that he condensed, and he warns you it's not pleasant reading. I'm going to underline that, but we're going to read it because we're brave enough to look at things we don't want to see. It says the conditions in the north of Gaza are Holocaust conditions. We don't use that word because it has a special place in the Western imagination and heart, but this is a Holocaust in terms of collective punishment and dehumanization and the technical tools. It's a Holocaust 80 years later being done remotely and on people's bodies. He says a missile is dropped in a densely populated civilian area, tents mostly, and then you have drones coming in after to pick off people one by one. So think about that. You didn't get killed by the bombs, the drones come in after. This is absolutely dystopic fiction. That's reality. He says we didn't have the drones in World War II, but we do now. And the logic is pretty much the same. Of course, he says this was the plan all along, which we have documentation of. We don't have to guess. Last year, when Al Jazeera reported that an Israeli real estate company was advertising shorefront homes in Gaza, it was called misinformation, but now we see this happening. This was reported in December of 2023, and at the time was called fake news, but now we see it happening more and more. We see real estate conferences on the border where people are actively picking out their territory. I don't think anyone can call this fake news. And again, according to Hirsch, this plan is coming together just like this, that the Israelis have built roads and bypass roads and corridors in the north of Gaza, and they're starting to nicely connect all with each other, as you can see when you look at the satellite images. The Israelis always said they were going to do this, and those living in Palestinians in Gaza will either be exterminated en masse, or as they are now, or they will be pushed south where they are humiliated and stripped and tortured and have to endure unbearable conditions. This guy or girl, we don't know who it is, and he says anyone I speak to recently who came from the north to the south describes the horrid condition of having their children taken away from them. You guys listen to this. Children lined up on one side and the Gazans told to pick a random child and go with that child to the south, even if it's not your child, not knowing if your child has made it. Oh. These kinds of horrific tearing of the social fabric are happening. Now, this is the image we see when we go to see a Steven Spielberg movie. Jews having to do this, right? Choose a child and just get on a train and hope for the best and never see your life again. How can this actually be happening now? Here is what he says. Yeah,
will Steven Spielberg make an Academy Award winning film?
Right. Do we? Oh, well, 4 decades later, where we'll see this, and by some kind of Steven Spielberg who gets the right to show us this. Take a look at this. What he says, that the social fabric of the Palestinians is being sundered. He says here, there are kids coming into hospitals. Yeah, that one. Can we put that up? Do you have control, Philip? Or have we missed it? Thank you. Kids come. Oh, that's okay. I don't want you to think that this is coming from me. It absolutely isn't. I want you to see it for yourself. I think we all need to look at this with our 2 eyes, if we can. There are kids coming into hospitals from stab wounds from uncles and fathers because they ate too much. So this is how a family becomes dehumanized, rape coming in from within the community because they're suffering. People are being tortured to the fact that there now is a dog-eat-dog world. I mean, it's a breaking of the social fabric after a year of hellish nightmare. So what then about the U.S. response? What will other allies of Israel do, or allies of the Palestinians? What will anyone do? Well, this source says they feel there is no leadership in the United States at this moment to stop them. There's nothing to stop them. And this is how really the Middle East feels, period. There will be a new phase, and suddenly the world's attention will go away from Gaza and Lebanon, and everyone will be talking about the annexation of the West Bank in a month or two. So, okay, you guys, it's November 2024. In January, we're going to refer to this but no, weeks actually, in just a few weeks. And we'll see, do we care now about the West Bank? We've sort of cared about it. Recall that Airbnb had taken settlers' homes off of the West Bank when they realized, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have occupied territory on the West Bank that's been stolen. And then they put it back on with a disclaimer, right? And so
can you imagine going on Airbnb, like you're trying to book a home in the West Bank and you're like, oh, so I see this home that we were thinking about going on vacation was taken from somebody.
Yeah. Is
that in the Airbnb disclaimer?
You can see it, right? Okay, go ahead, Philip.
I also feel that like that last image we had up where they said that they feel there's no leadership in the United States. I mean, I think it's if that's what they feel, I wonder if they're aware of how much worse it is that the leadership in the United States is actively working against them, actively supplying the people perpetrating these atrocities on them, and they're lining up to invest in the place where they used to live that they've now been kicked out of. I mean, that's the leadership in the United States.
Well, I think that the them that we're talking about here is actually Israel, that Israel feels there's no one to stop them. Or I don't know. Actually, they could.
Yeah, who's going to stop Israel, by the way? I mean, so there are some reports that President Trump spoke with Netanyahu and told him specifically, you have until January 20th, and then it's done. Like, it's over. So when he gets into office like this, so I don't know if they're ramping all of this up, trying to do as much carpet bombing as they possibly can ahead of time to annex all of this land. Of course, it's always been a land grab. Follow the money. Of course, we've covered the trillions of dollars in minerals and natural gas that they're about to steal. So, I mean, there's no one in White House to stop them. They're not. I mean, who's in the White House? Antony Blinken is literally our president of the United States at this moment, and he is fully in the tank for Netanyahu.
Yeah. And so we should, again, disclaim to you that we don't know who this source was that was speaking to Seymour Hersh. We think that most of his reporting has always panned out. And so that's why we trust him, and we think that we should collectively read this. It's happening right now. We're sitting by while it's happening. So
yeah, read Seymour Hersh's reporting on this and let us know what you think about his report on this. All right, let's talk about this, the mainstream media. So Trump has been picking a lot of his cabinet members, of course, and they can continue to come in. He just picked Dr. Oz yesterday and a couple of other individuals. Well, Trump's cabinet pick of Congressman Matt Gaetz has liberals in the deep state freaking out. He, of course, is vehemently anti-war. He's called out sending bombs and all sorts of things to these regions. They do not like him for this very reason. Well, Sunny Hoyston, the co-host of ABC's The View, and a former prosecutor, found herself in a bit of a legal pickle on Tuesday. She had to read a correction on air after making false and defamatory claims about Representative Matt Gaetz, accusing him of inappropriate involvement with a minor. And then during the commercial break, somebody from ABC's legal department must have made a phone call, because when they came back from this break, 3 minutes later, within 3 minutes, she had to completely walk the entire statement back, and she had to read something from ABC News's legal department. So watch this and then watch this.
And look for how sincere she is, too. Like, just let's judge the sincerity. I mean, I don't like to judge people, but yeah, let's judge the sincerity. Watch.
How could you nominate someone with allegations of child trafficking across state lines and having sex with a 17-year-old? My understanding further on in the interview, they discussed the fact that once he finds out that she's 17, he stops having sex with her.
Sonny, you have a legal note.
I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi. Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism. That DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being brought.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
So sincere. Okay, yeah. I have a hard time with her being so upset about child trafficking when we had a report from ICE during the Biden-Harris administration that showed that at least 300,000 children were lost to child trafficking. So you care about it if it's Matt Gaetz, but you don't if the Biden administration is doing it. I'm so curious. Yeah. Which children do you care about being trafficked?
Well, they don't care about the 350,000 that they've lost and that they can't. I know. Anyway, go ahead, David.
No, it's Philip.
Well, I was just going to say, she looked like a kid that had just been scolded and told to apologize to your sibling.
Well, and she's a lawyer, right? So she's a prosecutor. Yeah. She's like, I don't like being told this by other lawyers. So other lawyers from ABC News are basically like, you're probably going to be fired, like, unless you make this legal statement, because we don't want to be sued. Because she knew, like, what's going to happen there. They'll go after them for billions of dollars.
I just wish I was there during the commercial break when they made her do it. She probably had an absolute fit about it. I hope the studio audience saw that.
I think her body language and demeanor there in the sort of like addendum on that was, I think she was doing that like to be sarcastic, like they're making me say this, and that's why she was saying it that way. Yeah,
yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very astute.
I'm on a leash here, but I do not mean it.
She's reading it like, so Matt Gaetz has never done this before. Like
what I just said should be taken with extreme caution.
Like a verbal eye roll is what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Matt Gaetz, speaking of eye rolls, so Matt Gaetz eye rolled when he published this tweet shortly afterwards, or a post on X, and see his eye roll icon there. Like, what the heck?
Do you think that's what that is? I thought it was like I'm watching. I saw that.
I mean, it's either I'm watching or like I'm like, whoa, I can't believe they made her actually do that and apologize and actually tell the truth. Kind of, am I actually seeing that happen? I mean, I don't know. You're right, though. I've seen so many liberals melt down on X in the past week, and they're like, how could you possibly elect a convicted felon and rapist, is what they call Trump and everything. And what about the children, they say? And I think to myself, where have you been for the last 3 years? Are you not aware of this giant sex trafficking operation that's being run by the Department of Homeland Security under the direction of Alejandro Mayorkas, by the way? Like, is this not part of your world? You can't even see it? You're totally ignoring this massive sex trafficking operation in the United States under these pedophiles, but you're bothered by that?
Yeah.
Okay, you sickos. If you suffer from daily pain, I need you to listen to this message very carefully. What we know about pain relief is changing forever. As we age, aches and pains are normal, and we're all searching for effective ways to relieve pain without side effects and addiction. Let's be frank, we've all seen the horrors of the opioid crisis. You may even be affected personally. Your family might know someone that has been affected by this. That's where a pioneering medical scientist comes in, Clint Winters. You may have seen the world-renowned health expert featured in the national media. He's unveiled a natural pain reliever that has taken the world by storm. And I'm talking about Canoladine, the 100% drug-free way to get full-body pain relief without dangerous pills. As you read this right now, Canoladine has become the go-to pain reliever for over 1 million Americans, hundreds of professional athletes. It was even named as the UFC's #1 official pain reliever for the UFC. Right now, you guys can try it. Go to trycano.com/redacted, and you're going to get it for less than $1 per day. You can access the only Canoladine product in the world for less than $1 per day. Clint has provided this special link for you guys. You can guys get this special discount. Just go to trycano.com/redacted. I see a bunch of people in the chat who've already ordered this. Give it a shot. If you suffer from chronic pain, you don't want to have that addiction from drugs, try kano.com/redacted, the 100% drug-free Canoladine. Try it for less than $1 a day.
Well, MSNBC's Morning Joe ratings tanked even more than they already had. So they collapsed in the wake of Donald Trump's win in the election because people realized that they had been sold a bill of goods. Trump still won, and they didn't understand it. And MSNBC was not helping them to understand it. Well, then when Mika and Joe decided to go meet at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump, their ratings collapsed even more. So you can see here, they shot themselves in the foot. Take a look at this. They collapsed by 17% because these people had been telling them that Trump was the enemy, he was the devil, he was a fascist. And then they go to meet with them, even though they said he was the worst person in the world. People just clearly don't understand it. And so their ratings are tanking even more. And to my mind, they deserve it because they have not studied. They were not respectful of their audience, and they fed them lies, which is making them miserable. Now, here they are reading their own eulogy when they're talking about how they just can't compete with influencers.
1 in 5 adults regularly get their news from influencers on social media. The number is even higher among younger Americans, with almost 40% under the age of 30 getting their news from those sources. According to the Pew Research Center, the social media site X remains the most widely accessed platform, followed by Instagram and YouTube.
I mean, that comes obviously for political news. And Mike, that's the challenge. You grew up in a newsroom like Gene grew up in a newsroom. I mean, that's a lot of challenge. That's a challenge for a lot of mainstream media sources is, do they make themselves relevant again to here 20% of adults who actually get influencers on social media?
I don't know
maybe somebody who makes baskets, and while they're making baskets, they look up and say, vote for candidate X.
I don't know how they make themselves, how we make ourselves relevant again, because we can't compete with 20-second snippets on an iPhone, walking up the street,
morsels,
getting your entire news digest of the day in less than a minute on your phone as you're walking under the crowd with coffee in one hand and your phone in the other. I don't know how we catch up to that.
Yeah, well,
See
first
how
of all,
they
so you're
though, like, it's just people making baskets and then promoting a candidate. Like, they're not as good as us. They're somehow laborers who then spew their politics. It's very condescending.
Well, also, they've never been relevant. So this idea that they're relevant is bullshit. But also the idea that you're competing against 20-second snippets and sound bites is also total garbage. We have tens of thousands of people watching this show right now. This show usually goes about an hour or a little bit more, depending on how verbose we happen to be that particular day, right? Or if an interview goes longer. So people will sit and watch our show. We look at the data. And you guys are smart people. So you're watching and you're studying and you're reading the books and you're learning. You're not watching just 20. So basically, they're condescending down to people, basically saying that all of you right now, you're just watching little 20-second sound bites. That's all you're watching.
Right. And maybe they can compete by studying harder, respecting people, looking at both opinions, and being open and admitting when you're wrong. That's how you endear your audience. So they're sitting there literally going, we don't know what to do.
Well, and Joe Rogan does a 3-hour show.
I've done my best, right? Yeah.
Joe Rogan does a 3-hour show.
Right.
It's the #1 show in the world.
Yeah.
And Tucker Carlson does,
they're
his like 2
giving
hours.
themselves the excuse that their audience is getting stupider, not that they have to work harder to deserve them.
More relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. I'm absolutely, I don't like to be mean-spirited, but I am enjoying this pain from them because they lack humility. They need to say they're sorry and admit where they're wrong and stop condescending people and thinking that they're better than others.
That's right.